So you make this huge jump. So you've now known Massachusetts, you know Vermont, you've been kind of in this sheltered world, and you come to Washington, D.C., and you work for a senator. So tell me about that experience and what were you thinking?
It was a lot of fun. I'd also, in the middle, I'd lived in Europe for a little while in college. I studied abroad in Italy and traveled around a good bit. But the first impression that I had coming down here was how beautifully manicured everything was. You know, Vermont's the woods. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. But you know, the GW Parkway is so. You know, I imagine people out there at 4 in the morning clipping the grass. You know, everything was really beautiful being down here, and it was so fun being in a city that has so many things to do. Whether it's the museums, the art galleries, rock concerts, restaurants, you name it. It was fun to have so many options all at once.
So how was it for you making friends when you got down here?
Very easy. Working in Senator Leahy's office, everybody has a Vermont connection, so even though I didn't know any of them, you do immediately. You know, it's such a small state that while I didn't even necessarily make a personal connection with them, you're from a place that has a real identity, and you know, within minutes of arriving, you say, oh, I'm from this town, and it's like, okay, we're friends. Done.
Excellent. So what was your role? What did you do for him? And tell us about your career while you worked with him.
Sure. While I was an intern, I got to spend some time both on the Judiciary Committee and in his personal office. He was he actually transitioned, this was when Jeffords made his switch, he transitioned from being the ranking member to the why am I blanking? The chairman of the committee. And I actually was filmed on CNN like 2 days into my internship carrying boxes from the ranking offices into the judiciary as they wanted, you know, an image of this big shakeup that was happening when Jeffords, you know, switched parties. And so I got a lot of exposure on both sides there, did some writing, and then took a job in the front office full-time, not just as an intern. And it was a lot of constituent services. So writing letters, answering calls from constituents, taking them on tours of the Capitol, things like this. It was a lot of fun.
I bet you'd be a good tour guide on the Capitol. Because once you learn it, I mean, you know the great background stories.
And not only that, but it was a real chance to pull out the art history side of what I did. I mean, the Capitol is a beautiful building full of tremendous history and full of tremendous amount of art in there. So it was really fun to get to do all that together, you know, right out of college.
What was your favorite part of the job of working for a senator?
Ooh, the absolute favorite part. I think that it was greeting the constituents when they came down. You know, many people from Vermont, and I had also traveled to a lot of cities within the U.S. as I'd grown up. So, you know, I loved Vermont, but I was familiar with the rest of the world. I wasn't, you know, sort of a country bumpkin. But many people coming down had never been outside the state, for example. Our biggest city is 40,000 people. City is 40,000 people. And so getting to greet them and welcome them and, you know, show them all the things about D.C. that I was excited about was a very fun part of the job.
What was the thing you hated the most?
Getting up early in the morning.
Yeah. So we're really glad we scheduled this for you.
Well, that was however many years ago it is. I've gotten more used to it now.
Yeah, I know, and you work really long hours when when there's a project going on. I do know that.
Yeah, very long hours.
So how many
used
years,
to it now.
How many years were you with doing this?
I was in Leahy's office for a year. After the internship, I did a full year in the office, and then I moved over to the Motion Picture Association of America.
Well, that sounds kind of boring.
Oh yeah, not glamorous at all.
So tell me about that job and how you got it and what you did.
Sure. I'd been recommended. Someone was looking for an assistant. They knew that I was looking to move up in the office, but they didn't have anything to offer. At least nothing that was the right fit for me. There was one job I tried for, and I didn't want it. I knew I didn't want it. So it was going to be time to move on regardless. And you know, I'd put out word that I was looking. So I went over and I interviewed in the Congressional Affairs Office, and it was a terrific job. This was when Jack Valenti was still there. You know, Dan Glickman does a great job, but Jack Valenti was such a legend, an icon,
personality.
And a personality. You know, I learned so much from working in that office while he was there. You know, you see him a lot. It was a small office, about 35 people. And that was a terrific job. And I will say, it does sound very glamorous. It was very cool to get to invite friends over to see a movie before it was out. We would get, you know, advance access to some of these things, you know, and the wonderful cocktails and the dinners that they would do. But mostly, it was an office job just like any other.
This is pretty, though, fascinating, the things you get to do. Mm-hmm. How did you get that? I mean, how did you find this opportunity to move into this position?
Luckily, somebody who knew that there was a job opening there knew me, liked me, and recommended me for it. So I got very, very lucky. I didn't have to claw my way in the door, but I did have to interview. I went through several rounds of interviews. You know, I did compete just like everyone else for it. But in terms of hearing about the job, I had been recommended for it. So
I think this is,
that
we
helped.
always have a moment where we kind of
Sure.
pause and go, did you hear something here? Especially in this down economy. For anybody who has an opportunity to watch this video today, I think it's really important to talk about how do you get connected to another opportunity? Where's that next job going to come from? And it's through your connections. So it's really important that you get out there and continue to touch other people, to talk. Let people, you said you were interested, so you've got to let people know what you want, tell everybody, and then tap into those resources. So no matter what you want to accomplish, whether it's a new career, a promotion, a connection, whatever, that's the way. It's really a people connection that makes it work.
Very much so. This was, again, you're going to see a trend here. This was also an organic shift. I was open to a lot of different things, which some people that would drive them nuts to not have, this is my goal, this is where I want to get. That does cross out a lot of other opportunities that come up along the way. And I was a little bit more generally open to where I might have wanted to go. And that made it easier when something came up that was of interest. And there were other things that came up that I said no to that weren't the right fit. But that did, by being a little bit more organic about it, it's more of a who knows what might come your way.
So what were you doing while you were here? I mean, what was your fun things? What did you do for fun? What was your social life like? Were you dating anybody?
I did date, but I didn't have any very serious long-term boyfriends while I was here, but I did date. I had a lot of fun. Meeting different people and going out. I had a great group of friends, very sort of far-flung, where lots of people knew each other, some better than others, but that was always fun going out. My first year I did the whole Senate baseball team thing and got that out of my system. We did that, we played on the mall. I'm not a sports girl, we're all set now. But it was a lot of fun.
You checked it off the box.
Yeah, check that one off the box. But it was a great,
sports done, not so good, next thing.
It was a real sort of Americana experience and I loved doing it, but I am not a sporty girl. And so it was fun. I like to run, but other than that, I'm not.
So you were the girl when they were picking teams, you weren't the first one that they
I was usually the one sort of shuffling behind someone else rather than saying, pick me, pick me. But it was a lot of fun to get to do it. I met some neat people. But mostly I loved going to the museums, obviously. You've noticed my interest in art. So I loved doing the museums and keeping tabs. I had on my bookmarks on my browser all of the different museums as well as the galleries, their pages about what was coming up. And so every couple weeks I would kind of click through my browser and see, oh, such and such is coming up in the Corcoran, or the Phillips collection is my favorite actually in town, smaller gallery, smaller museum. And I would even put these into my calendar to make sure that I wouldn't miss things coming up. And then I did a lot of rock concerts, shows at the 930 Club, at the Nissan Pavilion, all over the place. And that was a lot of fun because we don't get big music bands coming through Vermont.
So one thing that's really fortunate about living in Washington, D.C., if you want something to do, there is no end to options. I mean, the museums offer an incredible, whatever your interests are. And as far as sports too, whether or not you're interested in that, but there's a lot to do here in the city. Other than the fact when it's cold, which I hate trying to get out there when it's cold. I just am like so ready for spring. I don't know about you.
Yep, and I did get to my football game. I got to my, my baseball games. I did show my support for the city of DC and make it to some of these games. Just not a regular.
So talk about your experience when you're at the motion picture industry and how you transitioned out of that. What was the highlight of that, working there? And what happened next to lead you out of that and where you're on your journey, your next part of your journey?
Sure. You know, the highlight was part of my job the first 2 years I was there in congressional affairs was to do some of the fundraising events that we would do for people in D.C. And it was really interesting to get to meet the different folks. We would also just put together meet and greet breakfasts where we're not actually lobbying, we're not actually, well, I don't know, sometimes people did, sometimes they didn't, it depended on the situation, but where it was just very informational. It was just a conversation with some of the power players of DC, if you will, and to get to hear those conversations and how they worked and the exchange of information was great. And the film industry, everybody thinks that, you know, we just ask for it and we get it. It's not true at all. You know, we're an industry just like any other in America that has interests, and it was really fun to hear that conversation go on and to get to be a part of that. And then I won't lie, you know, the events were great. To get to do, to put together these events that brought together such fascinating groups of people. Whether I threw them or not, you know, I saw, they wouldn't know me from anybody, you know, Supreme Court justices, the Attorney General, very senior senators and Congress people, folks from the different departments. It was really neat to get a window into that world and to see how it really works.
So how do you get on the invitation list for the Motion Picture Industry Affairs?
You're very nice to me, or you were back in the day.
All right. Not that I'd ever like to go to anything like that, like a really smashing party or anything with famous people. That would be, that would like so suck, wouldn't it?
You know what there weren't, though? There weren't movie stars. Everybody thought that we had movie stars running through our halls all the time. No. The really big deal was when Mel Gibson was there, he did, for press, a screening of The Passion of the Christ, which was a big, big deal, very controversial when it came out. He did that, and he was in the building, and everybody was getting up to sort of take breaks and to walk through, and I just needed some coffee. I'm just up, and I did not see him. I missed him. I was actually at my desk working when he came through. So,
what type of things is the motion picture industry wanting to lobby for? What do they need?
There's a lot of copyright protection that was going on, and some trade issues as well were things that I lobbied on in trade bills. In my later years there, I worked more in the international division at a junior level, but you know, still involved. And it's a question, the issue that bothered me the most, whether you think that you should be able to share your movies or not, the one that really bothered me was the piracy where you're in Asia, for example, and people are pirating DVDs and selling them on the street. $2, no big deal. These guys sell a lot of these for $2. And where do you think that money goes? Do you think it goes to taxes, to state-sponsored programs that are good and give back? No, they go to organized crime that feeds a lot of really nasty things. And you know, that was the one part where that was the thing that really got me the most about that job and made me feel very passionate about working for it, was trying to get rid of that and to keep that from happening.
So do you think we'll ever be able to overcome that?
I think it's a constant struggle, and I'm glad that the MPAA and you know, the member companies that they have, you know, continue to fight that. That's not just about their bottom dollar, which, let's face it, is part of it. I mean, they're companies, they want to survive. But I do think that there's a principle at stake there that's worth thinking about. You know, you hear that in the fashion industry too, about not buying the purses on the side of the street for the $20 that's the knockoff necessarily. You know, it doesn't mean it all goes to organized crime, but there are definitely some out there that do, and I certainly know that I wouldn't want my money going to that.